how they wanted to vote for particular chairs and vice chairs of standing committees. So if it happened, then that precedence was set, Mr. Speaker. I would like to say, lastly, for want of a clear law on impeachment of governors, deputy governors, and other state officers, then let us listen to the second limb, especially whether or not the standing orders of the County Assembly of Nyamira and the relevant statutes and the Constitution completely disallow voting by proxy. When we listen to the whole motion, and also we try and see if you can subsume this second part, then you can be able to make a clear, we can be able to have a clear vision, a clear view of this matter and make our decision. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely clear that the threshold was met, the two-thirds threshold was met, and so I oppose this motion, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Sekirengu. Senator Medu John Muhia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also weigh in on this matter. And Mr. Speaker, I look at Nyamira in a special lens from where I sit, because on this very house, Mr. Speaker, you know, there was a report that was laid by the Committee on Devolution that we were discussing on this very house of a county assembly that had two leaderships, a county assembly that had two speakers, and were even being invited to make a decision between these two warring groups, which group actually is the legitimate group, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, in my mind, Mr. Speaker, Nyamira is not any other county. And that is why I have been persuaded by the arguments of my colleagues who have actually said that we have not been invited to make a decision on
mfupa. Na kwa hivyo nitaachia Mr. Speaker.
Senator Omtata.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the opportunity to comment on this motion. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by associating myself with what Senator Soti said, that we run the risk of the House putting this motion to a vote, and if it votes to defeat the PO, which for practical purposes is turning out to be an application, not a pure PO, because if you listen to the County Assembly, they disputed the facts that required a hearing. Much as we may not agree, what I look at, Mr. Speaker, there are two issues which are being conflated. There's the question of quorum. When is a house quorate to conduct business? And there's a house of threshold when voting. So the question of what vacancies can only affect a quorum of a house. In a situation whereby, assuming somebody, you know, we are living in days when people are being abducted. If we had a serious motion on the floor of this house and half the house was 24 senators were abducted and 23 that remained, they will still have the quorum to conduct business, the 23, but the threshold that there should be a supermajority which would require 33 senators would have that motion automatically defeated. So I think we have confused the question of quorum and the question of the threshold to be achieved. And where there's no requirement for a supermajority, like in this House, 15 senators would sit and transact business because the quorum for this House is 15 senators. If it's the National Assembly, the quorum is 50 MPs, members of the National Assembly. They would sit and transact business. But when there is a requirement for a supermajority, it's a supermajority of the whole House. Doesn't matter whether there's a seat that is vacant or not. And even if you go to the law and the interpretation of statutes and stuff, you'll find that a vacancy on a board or a vacancy in a house, for as long as that vacancy does not affect the quorum, that house is quorate to conduct business. The challenge of the quorate house now is to realize the threshold for passing a motion. And if you look at our constitution article, I think it's Article 121, addresses quorum. Article 122 addresses threshold. And I believe that for us to be able to ventilate this question very well, I would associate myself with Senator Osoti to request that the current motion, which is really putting us in a straitjacket, be withdrawn, and we be allowed to ventilate this thing the way we did in Kericho 2, whereby we hear the entire motion, and then the PO is placed after people have understood the issues. Then we vote first on the PO, and if it is sustained, the governor is acquitted. If it is defeated, then we go and vote on the individual, on the merits of the impeachment. But right now, we run the risk of the PO being thrown out. Listen to the mood of the House. We discuss, we talk. The PO being thrown out, and then we shall be subsumed, we shall be forced to go into that motion and then vote without consideration of whether the thresholds required for the motion to be in this House to give us jurisdiction to address that motion was there or not. It is slightly dicey, and I'll be praying, Mr. Speaker, that either we amend this motion or we withdraw it and redraft it, because given the straitjacket I find myself in, I'm persuaded to defeat the motion, yet come out, but then also give the governor, keep the governor's rights protected, so that if the governor's case is that he has been dragged here through the window, not through the front door, as the majority leader put it, then we still have the opportunity to listen to that argument in detail. And I hoped that this particular thing should have come as an application and not as a PO, because really it doesn't fit the description of a PO. But since we have argued it, it looks like an application for dismissal, and we could look at the application for dismissal after hearing. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Veronica.
Thank you for these opportunities, and I want to join my colleagues in opposing the motion that is on the floor of this House. Because impeachment proceedings, Honorable Speaker, are very serious proceedings. We have two warring parties at the County Assembly and the governor and the people of Nyamira. As you can imagine, Honorable Speaker, the people of Nyamira, some of them you support the impeachment, and there is another group that will be against the impeachment proceedings. Honorable Speaker, what has been brought before the floor of this House are allegations based on factual positions. There's the allegation that 4 members or 3 members voted for these impeachment proceedings using proxy. Affidavits have been filed to demonstrate that this was not the position and that they never signed for this impeachment. Honorable Speaker, I'm asking myself, if this matter is determined on a preliminary, based on the preliminary objection, how will you scrutinize, how will we scrutinize the affidavits that have been brought to oppose some of the signatures that have purportedly signed in favor of these proceedings? Honorable Speaker, we need to help the counties and the county assemblies to take responsibility for every proceeding they undertake, especially proceedings for impeachment. Because, Honorable Speaker, the consequence of this impeachment proceeding succeeding is now taking the governor out of the office where he was voted in by a large majority in Nyamira County. The only way to hold these county assemblies responsible, Honorable Speaker, is to allow a scrutiny of those signatures that were supposedly done through proxy, and question why they were being done through proxy and whether they actually signed on behalf of the MCA and whether that was available to those members of county assembly. Honorable Speaker, that's why I join my colleagues who have insisted that the putting of the question, just like in the case of Kericho County impeachment proceedings, that putting of that question must be deferred until that evidence is scrutinized by the senators, so that the people of Nyamira also feel and know that Senate has listened to both sides. Honorable Speaker, the principles of fair trial demands that both parties be guaranteed a right of being heard. Some of these issues, if they are swept under the carpet in such serious proceedings, which are going to the permanent record of this House, how will Senate explain itself later that these issues have been canvassed, have been considered, members have then determined after listening through to all the evidence that is available? So, Honorable Speaker, I would oppose this motion and beg that because we created a precedent using the impeachment proceedings from Kericho County against the current Kericho governor, we follow and abide to the same precedent, pend and defer the putting of the question in line with